throughout the 70-plus years of Communist Party rule, and they have wantonly squandered the ultimate resource, the one resource you cannot do without, the most valuable resource of all, human beings. And they squandered them in purges and famines and so forth. And of course, the worst offense against humanity in China was the one-child policy, where hundreds of millions of unborn Chinese children never saw the light of day because their mothers were forcibly aborted at 4, 6, 8, even 9 months of pregnancy, and sometimes killed after birth. So all of that is factoring in to the ongoing population decline, which, of course, is now made worse by the economic decline. They are in lockstep. The fewer young people you have, the fewer people you have starting new businesses, having new ideas, investing for the long term. You've got unemployment rates in China now at, the government admits, somewhere in the 20th range. Young people without job, businesses, not going to get married and have children, especially if for the last 30, 40 years, they've been told that children are burdens and not blessings. They've been told that everybody should have fewer children for the sake of the country. Now, all of a sudden, you can't turn on a dime and say, start having children, everyone. We were wrong. We made a mistake. Of course, the Communist Party would never say that.
You know, the CCP forced the one-child policy when they thought the population was too high, and now they're encouraging Chinese to have more kids because of the declining population, countless abortions later. Does this speak to just how warped communist ideology is?
Well, it certainly does. I mean, the lack of value attached to human life is, I think, clear for everybody to see. You now have in China, you have more abortions taking place, now voluntary abortions, mind you, than you do live births. And that, again, speaks to the devaluation of human life that has been taught by the Chinese Communist Party, by its actions, by its rhetoric, by its ideology to the Chinese people over the last 3/4 of a century. And the other thing that people have to realize is, looking at it from a sheerly demographic perspective, you now have so few young women in their childbearing years, in their 20s and early 30s, that every young woman in China would have to have 3 children in order to stave off, in order to stop, in order to reverse the ongoing population decline.
Trump for being responsible for the overturning of Roe.
The former president handpicked 3 Supreme Court justices because he intended for them to overturn Roe. He intended for them to
What a lie.
take freedoms.
The push marks the campaign's
It was
first
wrong to
organized
begin
effort
with.
to emphasize the abortion issue. A judge on Monday ordered court records of the divorce proceedings of a special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, who is handling the Georgia election interference case against the former President Donald Trump, be made public. The court will also decide on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis will be deposed. A motion filed last week by Trump's defense attorney in the election case alleges
Of bribes or incentives that could induce young women to marry and have those children. And I'm very much afraid, though, that the Chinese Communist Party will not stop at incentives. That at one point in time, if the situation gets more and more serious, as I think it will, the Chinese Communist Party will say to young women, we are now ordering you to get married and ordering you to have children. Here is your quota for births of 3, and you must produce these children within the next 6 years. Now, if that sounds outrageous, of course it's outrageous, but it's no more outrageous than the Chinese Communist Party saying in the 1980s through 2016 that you are limited to 1 child, and should you conceive a child before we give you permission, we will abort that child. And should you conceive a second child, we will forcibly abort you and sterilize you in consequence. You can see in China's future that you may go from forced abortion, perhaps, to forced pregnancy, as the Chinese Communist Party is determined under a state plan to produce the number of children that the party wants, regardless of how many children the people of China want to have or don't want to have.
Stephen Mosier, fascinating perspective. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
You know, I believe it is us. I believe it is those of us who line up and say that we are here not believing that the rights of the child in the womb supersede the rights of the mother. We are here in the pro-life movement to say that the woman and her preborn child have equal dignity. They have equal worth. And what you'll find in the abortion movement is that they're out here saying that the rights of the woman supersede the rights of the child. And we're just trying to bring some balance back by saying, look, we want to support women and their children. We are the ones opening maternity homes, pregnancy care centers, support lines, case management hotlines, programs. We're the ones that are providing that support. You'll never walk into an abortion center and see stacks of diapers or referrals from maternity centers. They provide one option for women who are in crisis, and that is to kill their child. And that is not real help, and it is certainly not health care.
Is affecting everyone. So this is going to happen time and again unless public officials at all levels really sort of get it together and start pursuing policies that put students and families first.
I mean, with your assumption that this could happen more regularly in the future, how do you think that parents should respond? How do you think they should make their voices heard in this type of situation?
Parents need to make their voices heard at every level, but of course it all starts locally, and that means demanding that your local school board puts students first. That's true not just for immigration, but it comes to curriculum, making sure kids get to learn the fundamentals rather than being taught someone else's political priorities. It affects every facet of the way a school is run, and parents need to be the ones who demand from their local education leaders that students be put first and that parents have a seat at the table.
All right, excellent points. Thank you so much, Angela, for your time.
Thanks, Melina.
Now, switching over to another top of the ballot issue, President Biden is holding a campaign event rallying for abortion access in Virginia this evening. This comes after he rolled out his new abortion initiatives on the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade. With the low approval ratings, abortion is one issue on which Biden has been campaigning hard. We spoke with Sean Carney, who's the CEO of 40 Days for Life, about how abortion has been portrayed leading up to this election year by both Republicans and Democrats. Joining me now is Sean Carney, who's the CEO of 40 Days for Life. Thank you, Sean, for your time today.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Biden's task force are reportedly working on various executive actions that the president can take to expand what they call reproductive rights, aka abortion policy. Do you think we could see more of Biden skirting the Supreme Court ruling like we did with the student loan forgiveness? What do you think you guys would do at your organization if they do take such actions to skirt the overturn of Roe versus Wade?
Well, they're already trying to do it. I mean, I don't know what else Biden is supposed to do. The country is in shambles. The federal government's made abortion their sacrament. He will make his abortion and his campaign part of it. Wade was there. I mean, he announced all this on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Even Ginsburg said it was bad law, and the Supreme Court didn't just overturn Roe v. Wade. They beat it to death with a baseball bat. It was horrible. It was based on bad 1973 science, not even good 1973 science. And I frankly think that Biden just doesn't have anything else to run on.
So about the issue of abortion with regards to the Democrats campaigning, they use this term that, a federal abortion ban, and they use that to stoke voters and say this is what you can expect to see if Republicans take control of Congress or the White House. What would you say to voters who may feel when they hear federal abortion ban and that Republicans could push for that?
Well, there is no federal abortion ban, and Republicans are all over the place on whether they even want one. I mean, I think if I were a voter, I'd be very confident in pro-life Republicans not really getting anything done because they've been so inconsistent. I think the myth that needs to be exposed to help these Republicans is that abortion is a political loser, and it's not. It's not. Bad candidates lost in 2022, and they should have lost. But great pro-life candidates who owned things like the heartbeat bill, who owned the scientific and biological reality of unborn children, who owned the precedent in our country where we do protect unborn children, those governors won big. Governor DeSantis, Governor Abbott in Texas, where I live, Governor Kemp, those who were strongly pro-life, who didn't apologize for the Supreme Court, they won and won big.
Do you think that this is something that Republicans should be embracing more and campaigning on versus trying to shy away from?
Absolutely. They need to go on offense. They need to highlight these amazing abortion survivors. They need to highlight the women who have had an abortion, the droves of abortion workers who have left their jobs, particularly over the last 10 or 15 years. They also need to ask some questions like, when can we regulate abortion? They want to have abortion anyway, care. Never had this. They want to go back to Roe v. Wade, and Roe v. Wade put us in a category with only North Korea, China, and Vietnam in regards to abortion. Is that what they want? Do they want to be North Korea and China? And we have to force them, which Alito cited, by the way, in his opinion.
Interest rates are rising, cost of
helps and hopefully will continue to help every family in the state.
They're also introducing a bill to remove the state's revenue shortfall reserve fund and to accelerate the state income cut.
So you're going to continue to give Georgia a couple dollars back, which is great. What about the rehab?
With same results, Minority Leader Lee said the proposed legislation falls short of addressing pressing issues like Medicaid expansion and maternal mortality.
There are things we can do in this year where we can't wait another year, 100,000 insurance. We can't wait a year to talk about maternal mortality. We can't wait another year to start dealing with failed buses. Just the fleet of buses that we have in the state of Georgia have not been invested in 20 years. Come on, give me a break.
Now, if approved, Republican lawmakers say Georgians will realize both short-term and long-term benefits. At the state capitol, Deidre Dukes, Fox 5 News.
Deidre, thanks. Mayor Andre.
Weigh that order, which they did on Monday. Two conservative members of the court, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, joined the three liberal justices in the majority. Conservative Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh dissented. Texas put up around 30 miles of the wire along the southern border near Eagle Pass, Texas. Migrants can be seen here talking with Texas officials through the razor wire. Texas Governor Greg Abbott
Why don't they go over that bridge where they're supposed to?
News, calling the waves of illegal immigration
This is ridiculous.
But people, we don't know who they are, where they're coming from, or the danger they may pose.
Abbott says Texas cracking down on illegal crossings was the right move. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell addressed border security on Monday, calling it a matter of basic sovereignty.
America's national security begins with securing and maintaining our borders.
The fencing at issue in the dispute was installed on private property along the Rio Grande River by the Texas National Guard as part of what was called Operation Lone Star. The operation was launched by Governor Greg Abbott in 2021 to deter illegal border crossings. President Biden last week said he's looking for, quote, massive changes regarding U.S. immigration rules.
because I believe we need significant policy changes at the border.
Republicans have sharply criticized Biden's immigration policies and the flow of illegal entries across the border with Mexico, an issue certain to heat up ahead of November's presidential election. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Can change, right?
Yes. It was a bit of a process. So in the state of Missouri, they did introduce some legislation. The similar legislation had been introduced for a few years previous to my whistleblow. But after that occurred, the legislation was working through, and the state of Missouri passed a law to impose a moratorium, a 4-year moratorium on any new pediatric patients starting a puberty blocker, cross-sex hormones, or having surgery. And there was a grandfather clause in. So basically anyone who had already been on these treatments could continue. But one of the things that the legislature did is they increased the limit of time that somebody could sue if they were harmed by treatments. So in most states, this is really limited. It's maybe 1 or 2 years. So they increased the limit of time. And just that fear of liability closed the center. So most of the centers in the state of Missouri that were offering pediatric care have ceased to do so because of the extended period of time for liability.
Fascinating. I mean, it's incredible how what seems to be like a small change, in legislation.
What is a small change, but also it's interesting for the narrative, because the narrative is these are safe, effective treatments, long-term good care. And if that were the case, then nobody would be afraid of an extended period of time for malpractice.
I read the affidavit I did to see. It's utterly shocking. And I think we kind of, have to start looking at this clinic, fully bought into the whole approach. At one point, tell me how you got into this in the first place.
So I've spent years working in roles that are social work roles, so case management roles, working with individuals who are coming into their own for age and learning how to navigate adulthood and being a teen. So I was working with young adults who were HIV positive. And there is a big overlap for some trans people and HIV, particularly trans women, experience high levels of HIV infection. And so I was finding that a lot of the individuals that I were working with were trans-identified. So I became sort of an expert in trans issues within that setting. I was really good at helping people with things like legal name change, gender marker change. I understood these systems. I was looking at resources and ways to help people. This position working in the pediatric center. And a number of people came to me and said, you should apply for this. This really seems just something that you would be really good at. And so I applied, I started, that would have been around 2018. The center had only been open for a year. And I was the second person to take the role of the case manager in the center. And really probably only one of two people in the entire state of Missouri to have such a role. And I really did go into this believing that we were going to alleviate suffering and help young people become their truth selves.
This is the kind of the core idea here behind this, is that if you help young people early to realize they're the opposite sex or something different, they're all assigned at birth, which I find that highly problematic. But that if you deal with that early, then you'll have a healthy, happy person on the other side. That's the core. So would you agree?
Yeah, that's the core idea behind the whole concept. Yes.
And everything I've been learning about this over the last several years tells me the opposite is true.
Yes, if you really start to look at where these treatments came from and evolved and how we came to even be interfering in the pediatric body, you start to really question the whole model of care itself. I didn't realize the history of how this developed out of something called the Dutch Protocol that came out of the Netherlands, and how truly revolutionary and a lot of good quality research it was to start blocking puberty in a healthy developing body and go from a puberty blocker to a cross-sex hormone in a pediatric child's body. And as I worked in the center and as I began to understand more and more, not only where this came from, but what we were seeing in the population, so many truths about the treatment, they just weren't holding water.
So one of the things that's in your affidavit is that, I believe, is that in the Dutch model, they excluded young people with these psychiatric comorbidities, whereas in the scenario that you were working,
together on trips to California and the Caribbean. So far, her only explanation is to talk about race.
It's almost never seen a black man as qualified, no matter his achievements.
But according to emails obtained by the Fox 5i team, Willis has also used race when talking to defense attorneys. With a January 8th motions deadline fast approaching, Trump attorney Steve Sadow repeatedly emailed asking whether the DA's office had a certain document that had not been turned over for discovery. At one point on December 27th, he wrote in all caps, "Please respond to my emails below." After admitting she deemed some of the emails not worthy of a response, Willis's executive district attorney, Daisha Young, responded January 10th. "We are both aware, especially as an African-American woman, some find it difficult to treat us respectfully." Willis herself also weighed in. "In the legal community and the world at large, some people will never be able to respect African Americans and or women as their equal and counterpart. That is a
Playing the race card.
experience. Further, some are so used to doing it, they are not even aware they are doing it, while others are intentional in their continued disrespect."
It just seems so incredibly inappropriate to go to sort of the nuclear option of saying you're a racist and you don't respect women and those kinds of things.
Manny Aurora represented Kenneth Chesborough, one of the 4 defendants in the case who already took plea deals.
Being a jerk doesn't make you racist or demeaning of women or any of the negative terms that you've seen. And
Sadow had no comment about the emails. That same day, he responded to Willis by writing, "No defense counsel has treated you or your prosecutors in a disrespectful or condescending manner. The relationship among counsel in our case has nothing to do with race or gender, nor should it." As for Nathan Wade, Aurora believes a special prosecutor should step down, no matter his race.
I would just like to see a clean trial, and unfortunately, around Trump world, nothing ever seems to be clean, but now these prosecutors are feeding into it. It's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy of idiocy.
A self-fulfilling prophecy of idiocy, he says. Well, the DA's office had no comment on the email exchange. The deadline to respond in court to the conflict of interest allegations is February 2nd, and that is next week.
Yeah, just another point of interest in
the way it was intended.
Ellis, who is a Republican, says the inquiry into the Democratic prosecutor is nonpartisan.
Let's take a look outside now through our Georgia U.S. Department of Housing Development on Monday of this week. Organizers say the goal is to figure out where to send help. This morning, the mayor made it clear comprehensive help is on the way.
Today, I am announcing that I am issuing an executive order to allocate $4.6 million to the appropriate city departments to expand shelter services, warming center operations, additional shelter sites, and provide the wraparound services and security needed to go along with these additional locations.
The mayor also talked about launching a new housing initiative on Friday. These are shipping containers that the city has purchased and converted into affordable housing. You'll be hearing much more about that toward the end of the week. We are live in downtown. I'm Julie Proctor, Fox 5 News. County to count the homeless population. The Housing and Urban Development Department annually requires this head count. It helps the government determine how much funding is needed to address the issue. Atlanta City Hall is accepting donations that will help those unhoused fight the cold. They're accepting blankets, coats, and toiletries. The items will be distributed to various warming centers. In Southeast Atlanta, police are looking into a deadly shooting. Investigators believe a man tried to get into a woman's home at the Capitol Gateway Apartments. That's off of Logan Street. They say that they shot him moments later. It's not clear if investigators plan to charge the woman for doing so. Authorities say the two did know each other. Roswell police need your help finding a bank robbery suspect who may be armed. Police chased James Rayborn after a robbery at Truist Bank on Holcomb Bridge Road. This was Monday afternoon, and we're told Rayborn escaped into a neighborhood off of Old Mountain Park Road in the Mountain Park area.
He walked in the bank, presented a note to the tellers. I don't have the specifics about the contact that was provided there, but did leave with a certain sum of money.
If you happen to see Rayborn, don't approach him. Instead, call 911.
Let's focus our attention on the weather this afternoon. Gosh, you can't even make it out. All you know is that it is a little misty out there. This would be a live look across downtown Atlanta from our Fox 5 net cam, but you just can't make anything out of it. Fox 5 Storm Team meteorologist Jeff Hill joins us now with the forecast, and it was quite dewy out there this morning.
It's very dewy out there right now, too, and we're going to continue to see the little showers coming throughout the day today, and maybe some thunderstorms on the way for later on tonight. So it's going to be a mess here over the next several days. In fact, all the way through Saturday, we're going to get rain showers and thunderstorms pretty much. Orientation here with the rainfall all the way from Lexington through Nashville, down through Jackson, Mississippi, Baton Rouge. The whole pattern is just going to continue to slide over to the east. So we're going to be on top of this train of moisture coming up on top of us day after day as we go through, again, the early part of the weekend. Right now, really nothing heavy enough to show up on our Fox 5 Live Viper, except for a couple of showers as you get just to the west of the Gadsden area. Look at all these flood watches, flood warnings going on right now from Yazoo City toward Baton Rouge, and we've got a flood watch posted now here for North Georgia. So we're looking at maybe 2 to 4 inches of rainfall by the time it's all said and done with through Friday evening. So that's that flood watch, and again, we'll get more rainfall coming our way too as we go
to address our city's homeless population. Fox 5's Angelique Proctor tells us what the mayor...
It's under viaducts like this that so many people are sleeping and finding shelter, heading us and blankets. Well, the mayor says he has the homeless long term.
Every single one of us is just really one bad day, one serious illness or tragedy away from experiencing homelessness ourselves.
Mayor Andre Dickens calls it a moral obligation that we must address. Hundreds of unhoused men, women, and yes, even children, sleeping in tents and on blankets in the streets of Atlanta. The mayor announced a bold new rapid housing initiative that should result in permanent housing for our most vulnerable citizens.
Today, I am doing an executive order to allocate $4.6 million.
City leaders announced $3.1 million already allocated to Gateway and Partners for Home. Hope Team officers from the Atlanta Police Department vow they will not criminalize homelessness.
These officers are now equipped every time they encounter an individual that is experiencing homelessness. They have more ready available opportunities to get that individual off the street.
Partners for Home Eliminate Homelessness says our unhoused are up 30% from 2022 to 2023.
Housing is into ending home and not housing alone, but having a wraparound support of individuals as they turn out of homelessness into safe, affordable housing.
Partners for Home says it has a record. In the last 12 months, the agency has assisted with placing 2,000 households housed in permanent housing. In addition to the $7.7 million already invested, the mayor says the city has bought shipping containers that they have transformed into affordable housing. He launched over down Proctor.